What's going on, guys? This video is going to highlight the strengths of Water Gun, which is a really underrated and underused move in Squirtle's toolkit, and some potential ways that you can possibly use it to kind of like push your own game plan or push the Squirtle meta as a whole, or, you know, all of the above. Just as a little bit of a warning, this video is unscripted. I'm pretty much just reciting this off the cuff. And I'm not very good at making impromptu videos / decisions, so you're just going to have to kind of bear with me. Hopefully you learn something or something along the lines of that. But anywho, let's get started. So in order to understand like how Water Gun works and how you should be using it, you kind of have to understand like what makes Squirtle such a good character. And the main thing that makes Squirtle like super good is the fact that his frame data is like pretty bonkers when you think about it. Like, he just has, like, crazy frame data, like, up the wazoo, right? Like, we're talking, like, aerials, grounded, normals, like, everything. He has, like, a frame 2 jab. I think this is, like, frame 5 or frame 6. F-tilt is just a broken move in general, so I guess you could say that Squirtle players are, to an extent, carried. Back air is, like, really fast. Forward air is fast. And air is fast. Down air is, like, pretty crazy in a lot of situations. But all of these moves tend to kind of share a weakness in that even though they are safe, they're not very rangy, and if you're fighting a competent opponent who knows the PT matchup and knows how to fight all 3 Pokemon effectively, they'll know that the best way to go about fighting Squirtle, usually, obviously there are exceptions, but usually, for most characters, the best way to deal with Squirtle and deal with his oppressive hitboxes up close is to wall him out, and or camp him. But for this video, I think like it'd be a little bit better if we focused more on walling out, and in the future, maybe, you know, another video could talk a little bit about how to beat camping. They're pretty similar in concept, but I think that like walling out is a little bit easier to deal with, and I'm about to explain why. So characters that do a good job of walling out Squirtle are characters like Chrom, Roy, ZSS even. I know some ZSS players think that Squirtle like kind of destroys ZSS, and even though I think Squirtle does have the advantage, like ZSS still has a little bit of trouble dealing with them too. Palutena can be a little bit troubling for Squirtle to deal with for the same reason. Again, like it's a lot of hitboxes that outrange you. Palutena can rack up a lot of damage, as can a lot of the other characters that I mentioned, off of walling you out. So how do you beat this, right? Like how do you go about counterplaying it if you see that your opponent is sticking to a strategy that's like super wall heavy? So the first thing is obviously just abusing your movement, right? Squirtle is not that fast on the ground. I know it seems like pretty fast here because, you know, this stage also isn't too big and Chrom is relatively close to the camera in this frame, right? So movement is definitely an option. Squirtle is decently fast, not super fast, but decently fast. So he can do a little bit of that as well. And it works in a lot of situations, right? Like, you can definitely create a lot of openings just by using your small hurt box, abusing the fact that a lot of your moves are like pretty active, like back air, down air, or forward air even, right? Or you can abuse your good air acceleration. But I find that one of the most consistent ways of dealing with people walling you out is using Water Gun. So when people wall you out, right, like usually their go-to wall out option is an aerial, right? In Chrom and Roy's case, it's usually like, you know, a lot of back airs, a lot of forward airs, some nairs in there too, because nair again is active, it's a multi-hit. It's just very good for walling out, right? Other examples of like good wall out moves would be like Shulk Nair, Shulk Fair, just moves that are very big and cover a lot of space, right? So if Squirtle's like trying to jump at you aggressively with like a fair, right, you can just like wall him out, right? You can wall him out with a move that outranges his. Nair is also fast but stubby, right? You can just wall it out. So the way you beat it is you can use Water Gun to deal with it. Now, of course, in order to use an aerial, you have to jump. That's right, ZSS means you have to jump, right? So let's set our CPU to jump here, right? So he's jumping. So the first step to walling out with an aerial is jumping. So what Squirtle can do is he can just Water Gun. And suddenly, it becomes much harder for the opponent to wall out Squirtle. So why is that, right? Well, one of the big reasons why Squirtle gets walled out in the first place is because he can't choose his positioning well enough for him to create an opening for himself. In other words, like, it's hard for Squirtle to create an opening for himself over here as opposed to like here. Because here he has the option of like forward tilt, down tilt, like jab, right? But over here, like, his only real options are like maybe side B as a mix-up, maybe F-tilt or sliding F-tilt in my case, because sliding F-tilt is pretty broken. You know, like maybe you could overshoot with a back air, right? Like, it's a pretty universal option flowchart, but it doesn't always work against characters who are good at walling out, right? Especially if the opponent is good and is going to read it. So a good option here is just beat the Water Gun. Right now, as you can see there, Water Gun also works on grounded opponents. And some characters are very, very good at walling out Squirtle on the ground and in the air, too. A character like that would probably be Sephiroth, and that Sephiroth has like a really good F-tilt. He can angle up and down, you know what I mean? Like he has side Bs, for example. Like he can do a lot of things to just wall out Squirtle completely. But again, a good option for counterplay for walling out like that is Squirtle Water Gun, right? Water Gun will push him away, and then as you can see, like Squirtle can get better positioning here. Like he can let's say Water Gun the opponent here, like hold shield, and suddenly he's like ledge trapping, right? And I think Squirtle's ledge trapping is like pretty above average, all things considered. So it's like a pretty good time. You know what I mean? And I think that this is something that you can kind of like play around with a little bit yourself. You can see what works well with your playstyle, and you can try to integrate it, right? I'm not saying that there's one way to always Water Gun, you know what I mean? Like Chrom is always going to jump precisely, you know, X amount of units from ledge, and you will always Water Gun him off stage, right? But like, it's definitely a solid option because it lets you get the positioning you need. It lets you put the opponent in disadvantage, and in a lot of ways, it's like really good for just establishing stage control. And you don't have to stay Squirtle after your Water Gun. Naturally, you could go with Water Gun and switch to Ivy and like get an edge guard, right? Like you can switch this Charizard, and then you can just harass the opponent that way, right? Like I think that the options, even in practice, are pretty fast, and you can pretty much just figure out what you'd like to do. Like that's the cool part about Pokemon Trainer. It's all about like figuring out what kind of suits your playstyle best. So I hope that video wasn't too confusing to follow. I hope that I was at least relatively clear. And with that being said, yeah, just keep having fun with it. And if this by stretch of the imagination does well, I might even release a second one. Thanks. See ya.